All right, so I'm officially starting the broadcast here, so I'm going to check in with Mary and see if, Mary, can you hear me? Okay, Christy, looks like you're not on the audio, right? So if you wanted to join the audio, right, I could let you participate. If you want to just participate via the chat, that's okay. All right, so I just want to make sure that the both of you can actually hear me. Okay, I see Mary's trying to ask a question. Here we go. All right, I'm going into the chat, right? So checking with Mary to see if you can hear me okay. Or Christy, if you want to respond as well. I just want to make sure you guys can hear me before I take off. Okay. All right, so Christy can hear me and Mary can hear me. We're great. All right, so if you have questions, right, then feel free to use the little raise your hand thing. I can open the audio so that you could physically ask a question. I do have Mary's audio open. Let me see if Christy. All right, Christy, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, and I can hear you. Okay, good. Okay. All right. So with only two of you in here, it's really better, right? If we have this interactively, then I can address specific questions that you might have. This is going to be recorded, right? So we can always go back and review this at your leisure. So essentially, what you got here is a free PI training, custom PI training, right? So Christy, you're with Radiant, right? And are you multiple store?
No, just one.
Just one. Okay. And Mary, are you multiple store? You could drop into the chat or the question, okay, if you want. Okay. Okay. So Mary doesn't have a mic, and she is multiple store. Okay. So we're going to address both of those scenarios, right? So Christy, when you take a physical, or have you taken physicals in the past?
Yeah, I mean, this would be my, oh gosh, just a reference for doing this job. So we have reads coming now. So this is just kind of a refresher for some stuff.
Yeah. All right. And so how do you actually take your counts? Do you have scanners? Do you rent scanners from us? Do you hire Regis or Washington to come in and count?
We hire Regis, and then we have to do hand counts of all of our bulk, and then I just manually put that in. Okay. And so, Mary, how do you actually take your existing counts? Do you hire Regis or Washington, or do you rent scanners from us? Do you have your own scanners? Okay, you have scanners and you do it ourselves. Okay, so when we get to that point, we'll cover both of those, right, scenarios here to make sure. And if you have questions, just pop into the question mark place and add them. I'm going to try to minimize questions here. Doc. Okay, all right. So we're going to officially start, right? This is our agenda right here. So we go through, preparing for a PI. If you guys have done PI before, that'll be review. But we would be remiss if we didn't deal with the prep, because the prep is 90% of doing a successful physical inventory. The other thing that I have at my disposal, if you've never seen
one of these documents, right, that explain how to do a physical inventory from top to bottom, depending on whether you use a scanner. I'm not sure I have one that's specifically designed for Regis, but still, these documents can be, very good to have on hand, right, when you're reviewing this yourself, right? So if you don't have something like this, then I can, get one emailed to you so you have that at your fingertips when you're ready to do this. All right, so first thing about doing a physical inventory, if you're multiple store, you need to make sure that you've vouchered in, right, or transferred any merchandise that's physically going to be in the remote stores when you count. And depending on how far apart your stores are, you want to make sure that you tell Retail Pro, I'm transferring this or I'm vouchering it in, and make sure that it's got enough time to get to the store, right, so that it's physically there when the time comes to do a physical inventory. Another step in remote physical inventory is initializing your physical inventory out to the remotes 2 or 3 days before the physical. It doesn't have to be the same day, but essentially what you're doing is you're making sure that the on-hand at the remote store matches what the main has for the on-hand at the remote store. All right, so if you're not familiar with those steps, Mary, I'm going to go into the polling right here in on the side menu here. I'm going to go to stations, right, and so this install, right, has a whole bunch of stations, okay, but what you want to do is do what we call initialize, right, so you don't need to pick the station over here. You go to initialize, okay, you pick the store here. In this case, I think I'm deciding to do that store, okay, and the only thing you want to initialize, okay, is here, right, so if we go there, we want to open that up, so open that up, come on now, cancel, cancel. Okay, inventory, nope, that's not what we want. Oh, wait, that's right, I'm sorry. I'm so used to doing this for version 9. I forget sometimes what I'm doing. All right, so you just want to do this one inventory section right here, right, for whatever the stations are that you're going to count. So if you have, Mary, if you have more than one remote and you're going to count one this weekend and one next weekend, it's okay to do both of your stations, right, at the same time and just get it over with. We recommend that you initialize the inventory on hand, within a weekish, right, of when you're actually going to do the physical, okay? And so I'm just going to go ahead and click this off here. So select the station, select this inventory over here. It's going to put a faded check here, but that's what you want that to look like. You click OK, and then the next time it polls, it's going to send that initialization out to the store. Okay, and then with remote polling, or when you have remotes, you want to make sure that when on the day of the physical, that you that your polling is up to date before you do the start physical, and we're going to talk about the start physical in just a second. Okay, as far as other prep for the physical, okay, if I go back to my agenda, right, so these steps right here are in the lead up to actually doing the physical, right? So we do recommend that you back up Retail Pro, okay? And if you're you have a backup scheduled, just check it and make sure that it ran, right? If you don't know where your backup is, now's a good time to figure that out, because if something catastrophic happens, right, this is your, your best defense against getting that fixed, right? So we recommend that you back up your Retail Pro data. If you don't know how to do that, or you're unsure of how to check it, with one of the techs here and make sure you know how to do that. It's a good thing to know anyway if you don't know. A lot of people will run an on-hand report before, and the level of detail on your on-hand report is totally up to you. Some people like to run an on-hand report the day that they take the physical, okay, and then when they get ready to update the physical, they'll do that same on-hand report before and after they actually do the update. And that, of course, is an optional step. If you want to run an on-hand report, right, that's going to be in your reports section. And you might have different on-hand reports than what we see in here. And like I said, the level of detail on that is up to you, right? So just any on-hand report that shows your on-hand at whatever level you think you're going to need it at. So at item level or at summary, we're having a long time trying to get to this. What is going on? There we go. Okay. So any kind of on-hand report, I should have an inventory. Let's refer this. A lot of old reports in here. All right, so there's the inventory reports. So just anything that says on hand. So this is items by department, or just on hand, that's going to give you an item level if you just want the totals. So pick your on hand report. If you have to turn it into anybody, make sure that the on hand report has cost, inventory, or quantity, cost, and retail on it. Most of the time your accounting people are going to care about cost. They're not going to care about retail. All right, so I'm going to minimize that. Now, know which on-hand report you want to run. Run one before you do the start if you want to. Okay, and then the last thing on our getting ready to do this list, okay, is second to the last, test to download. Now, for you who are doing Regis, right, you have to send Regis what we call a validation file a few days before your physical. And the validation file is a list of what your Retail Pro item codes are and UPCs if you're using them. Christy, are you using vendor UPCs?
Yeah, we do. And if not everything has a UPC, so they're told to scan the tag.
The Retail Pro barcode, right. Mm-hmm. And so getting do you build the Regis validation file yourself, or do you have us do it?
I have you guys come in and do it and send, and then get it ready for the night. Then I email it to them.
Yeah, and so that's usually a few days ahead of time. They're usually pretty good about yelling for it if they don't have it, right? Mm-hmm. And if you've done this before, right, it's just a standard format. We do it, we send it to them, and it's all ready when you get ready to do the physical. Now, what this is really referring to, test to download, right, is making sure that your scanners work, right, before the day of the physical, and finding out, my scanner doesn't work, it wasn't never set up on this computer or anything like that, right? So for you, Mary, right, if you own your scanners, then you want to dig them out a few days prior on a weekday, connect them up, right, and make sure they work. If you've gotten new computers since the last time you did a physical, you might want to make an appointment with one of our techs, right, to make sure that the scanner is connected and the drivers are in place, or any of that kind of stuff before the day of the physical, so that you're ready to go. If you're going to a remote, same thing applies there, right? If you've used those scanners in that remote before, right, and you haven't changed computers, chances are it's okay. But if it were me, I'd want to know that it's okay before Saturday night, when there's nobody in tech support to help you if it goes wrong, right? So test to download, okay, and if you've used the scanners before, then the actual Retail Pro part of the setup is already going to be done, but I'm going to show you where that is just in case it's necessary for you to come back and look at it. Okay, this information's also in this document, our PI outlines, right? So it shows what to do to prepare, right? Talks about initializing, talks about making a zone map, which we'll talk about in a second, right? Talks about initializing, and then after that, right, a couple of things that you do in Retail Pro. One of them is checking out your scanner, okay, and making sure that that everything is good to go with the scanner before the night of the physical. Okay, so if we go to options and workstation preferences here, okay, that's fine. I'm running this in demo mode, so it reset. You know, it's not licensed, so it messes with my quantities every time I do that. All right, so we're going to go in here and look at the scanner options and workstation preferences from the main screen. Ready to go. Okay, and then here under peripherals, right, and portable barcode. Okay, so this is the barcode reader type. If you have the old PT curly cord type, that's what this one is, right? If you have the Janims or the symbols, okay, and I have a picture of those too, right? So this scanner right here. Okay, so if you have either one of those type of scanners, okay, that's this palm, right? So depending on the type of scanner, we don't run into any of the other types anymore, realistically, but you make sure you're set for the right thing, right? And then you're ready to test, right? And you can test in, you know, the POS screen. You don't actually have to be in the PI, right? So if you're using scanners, you can go into a sales receipt. Okay, I'm going to start a new one, and I don't have my, I have my barcode icon or my barcode button over here on the side. So if I'm in a sales receipt or any document, an adjustment, voucher, PO, anything like that, there's a barcode icon on the side, right? You can plug up your scanner, right? Make sure it's ready to communicate, right? You hit this barcode button, right? And then press the buttons on the scanner to transfer over your information, right? And then it should appear on your receipt, and then you just cancel the receipt. So it's important to make sure that all the parts physically work, okay, before your the day of your physical, right? So that you're not left with people standing around and the scanners don't work. Okay, so test to download, that's important. And then let's talk about you know, preparing the area, right? So Christy, when you do this, have you used zones?
Well, Regis comes in the day before, and then they do their hang tags for their zones.
Okay, so so they essentially do this for you, right? So that they can keep track of what they've counted and what they haven't.
Right.
Right, and so that's the reason for a zone map, right? And so Mary, if you use zones, which we highly encourage everybody to do, particularly with the scanner, right? It's a way of making sure that everybody knows I went and counted this orange section here, and you could put a zone name on it, right? And so you give the scanner to someone, you say, go count this front counter or whatever it is, right? And then bring me the scanner when you're done, right? And then a lot of people will do what Regis does, is so they go put hang tags, right, on their physical locations, and then they pull part of the hang tag when it's counted and carry it back to their supervisor, so they know they've counted everything. You can do a similar thing even if you don't use Regis. What a lot of people do is they get, you know, 2 different colors of sticky notes, right? And they'll put and make sure they're like the neon kind, so it's really easy to see. So let's say this is a rounder, right? This brown dot right here, right? So there's a green sticky note on the rounder, let's say, if it hasn't been done, right? And then when it's been done, you put a different color on it with the initials of the person who did it and approximately what time, right? And that's totally optional, but whatever you feel you need to do to make sure that nobody gets confused about whether this section's been counted or not, okay? So that's the advantage of doing a zone map. That's the reason you do a zone map. That's why we encourage people to do this, because usually, right, you have more than one team of people out there counting stuff, okay? And so, Christy, for you with Regis, you say you manually count some stuff, right? And
yeah,
so how
we do
you
like our bulk. I'll do my own zones for like our bulk herbs and our bulk body care. That's pretty much what we really have to count for ourselves. So
right, but you have that, you know, clearly marked. Regis, stay away, right?
Yep.
Right, and so that's the key to all this. Just make sure that it's crystal clear, right? What you're counting, what somebody else is counting, and for you, Mary, for anything where you know, you've got multiple teams, whatever you can do to make sure that that I could walk into your store and say, you could hand me a scanner and say, go count this orange section, right? So if you look at it that way, where you could have somebody who knows very little about your store take a scanner and go scan that area and then bring me the scanner when you're done, then you're successful with your map. Okay, so all of that's prep work, right? You do all of that stuff and you're organized for day of. Okay, so inventory day of comes. Okay, and the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to do what we call start physical. Now, for you, Mary, in the remote, right? Hopefully you're able to, you're counting when the store is closed, and you're going to count everything in the store while it's closed before you open up back for business, right? If that's not the case, we can talk, separately about that, okay? But the best possible scenario for taking a physical in the store is close the store, do the start physical, which we're going to do in a sec, right? Count everything, right, before you open up for business, okay? Now, the start physical, okay, is on the tools, more, retail, or RPro PI. All right, so once you open this, and you can start the physical. I know at Radiance you have more than one register, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you can start this on any register. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the one that you're using the scanner on. But you only do this once, right, at the beginning after you're closed for the day, right? Now, for you, Mary, at a remote, okay, you want to make sure that you are closed for the day, and it's a good idea to quick pull, okay? And if you're not familiar with what that is, we can, spend a little time, looking at that specifically. But what's important is to make sure that the on hand at the store is in sync with the on hand at the main for that store, right? So we recommend that you go to the store once you're closed, you do a quick pull, okay, and then you do this start physical. Okay, so you go to Tools, Options, RPro PI. This is the menu that you get once you do that. You go to Physical, okay, and Stores. Okay, and then once you go in here, what you're doing is you click New, and in the case of both of you, you probably are not going to get a bunch of store lists. Okay, but you want to make sure that you pick the store that you're counting if you do get this store list. Okay, so at a V8 remote, for Mary, you will probably only see that one store. Okay, just so you know. And you're doing this at the remote, not at the main. All right, so once you click the OK button, what it's going to do is it's going to go take a snapshot or freeze of whatever the retail pro thinks you have on hand at that moment in time. And then you go count. Okay, so once you have done the snapshot, right, then it's time to count. Okay, now for you, Christy, with Regis, right, this is, you can have Regis start counting, right, before you actually do this, because you're not going to get the Regis file. Usually you get it the day after, right?
Get it day of, actually. They download it onto a zip drive and then just upload it.
Okay, good. All right, good. Okay, so sometime before you get the Regis count, you do the start physical. For you, Mary, right, you do the start physical once you're sure that you've done the quick pull. Okay, you do the start physical, and then you're ready to count and start loading your counts into the zones. All right, so once you do the start physical, you do that once and only once at the beginning. Okay, then you go to zones. Okay, now for Christy, right, the only reason that she's going to go into zones is if she wants to input her manual bulk bin counts. Okay, and so for her, this is just a little piece of her puzzle. For you, Mary, this is everything, right? So you have somebody go out, they count that orange section, they come back to you with the scanner, you hook the scanner up to the workstation, you click on new, right? You tell it what store you're counting, you tell it what zone you're counting. Now the zone is 5 characters, right? So, and it doesn't have to be, it can be alphanumeric, but you only get 5. Okay, so call this anything you want. If you want to make notes, you can, as to who counted it, and any of that other information. Okay, but you start a zone, and then it's automatically going to give you this screen, okay, where you tell it how you're going to bring a file in, right? And so if you're using the scanners and you're dumping it in here, right, then you're going to be portable terminal, right? And then depending on what type of scanner you have, it's going to say this, or it's going to press hot sync button now, or it's going to say press start send. So not knowing which type of scanner you might be using, this might be different, but now it's time to press the buttons on the scanner to download the items. Okay, and I don't physically have a scanner here, so I can't actually get through that process. Okay, and we have to wait for it to time out. Okay, but if you're having trouble getting this coordinated, this would be something that you could call in day of, right, and get some help with. So if you want to practice this ahead of time when you're testing downloading the scanner, you can actually start a physical and test it to make sure you know what you're doing, and then just throw that physical away if you so desire. Okay, but this is how you get it off the scanner. It will prompt you right when it's done. You click OK, and then all of the items that you scanned, okay, would appear, behind you like this. Okay, so this should show everything that we scanned. Okay, I'm just going to add a couple of manual things in here. Right, so I'm just adding a few things in here manually so I can show you kind of sort of what it looks like, right? So this is what your zone listing is going to show, right? It's going to show your import ID, how many, right? This is what it looks like in a zone. Now, if you have errors when you download, okay, you'll be able to see those in this error listing over here on the side. Okay, And what you will see is what in the import ID, you'll see what you actually scanned, right? And it won't be recognized in here, so everything else except for scan quantity be blank. All right, so there are some examples in my cheat sheet here of what to do with errors, right? So I'm going to get all the way past where we are, right? Starting and entering zones, we're past that. Okay, and then entering zones, we're past that. Okay. Okay, we're past that, Okay, past that. Okay, so handling scanning errors, right? So this is a good section. If you don't have this and you would like a copy, just let me know which type of scanner you have, and we can email you this document, right? So you have this, but when you're scanning things, errors do happen, okay? And so if they do, right, this explains what to do. The zone is going to be marked with a red dot. Okay, so it's easy to see what things have errors, right? And so if you highlight the scan zone with the red dot, click the errors on the sidebar, you're going to get a display that looks something like this. Okay, so the one here that was not found is this one with no descriptive information. Okay, the items that are showing above and below that, right, are what was next to that item that didn't show up, right? So what it's trying to tell you here is you scanned this 9989979 thing, right? But it was next to this Caro vase, right, or bulb setup cube, right? And you should go look for those things in that zone to see what this was. All right, so handling errors, you know, demonstrating it in here is a little bit tricky, right? But you have this error display so you can see what's going on. You also can print a zone report. If you print a zone report, okay, am I not on the right zone? Here's a zone. Okay, scanned, print, zone report. And of course, I don't have the preview on. That would be important. Hang on one sec. Let me turn the preview on. Options, workstation preferences, printing. So zone, files, preview. Right there. Alrighty then. So I'm going to go back into physical and zones. Right. So here's the zone that I counted. Right, I can go into the scanned portion. This is where you would sit after you've downloaded the zone. And you can click on the print, right? If you don't have this BHD zone report, let us know. We can get it to you, get it, you know, on your remotes or whatever you need. If you've taken physicals before, chances are pretty good it's already there. Okay, but what this does is show what you scanned, and if you had an error listing, right, that section up here at the top that I just showed you in the documentation would show up there. So it will show what you scanned that Retail Pro didn't recognize and what it was next to. So if you have errors, you can print this report, go back out to wherever the zone was, and see what was, you know, see what it's next to, and see if you can figure out what the problem was. All right, now, so for you know, for you, Christy, you know, you're going to do the bulk bins and that's it. You're going to do those the day of, right? And just download them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, chances are, since you're just doing a small puzzle thing, you're not going to be dealing with errors.
There's still some errors. You'd be surprised. And I know how to fix it because it's usually they're missing the beginning of UPCs. But yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So. The thing about the errors is you got to do something with them before you can reconcile your physical, right? So, Mary, in your case, right, if you have errors, there's two ways to think about dealing with them. Way number one is you print the zone report, right? You go out to the floor, you find the item, right, that was bad, right, and pull it out of the zone and put it in a, I'm going to deal with this later pile, right? Hopefully you're not dealing with a lot of stuff. Okay, so that's way one of dealing with it. Way two of dealing with it is to identify what it is, figure out what the Retail Pro ID is for that item, and then in the error listing, right, you can actually edit this and put an item number right in this item number field, right, and then it would say, okay, I know what that is, right, and it would you know, be able to add that to the counts, right, because it knew what the item number is, right. So let me see if that is explained here. Yeah, so this explains here, correct item number, enter that in place of the item number, or delete the scanning error and put it aside, right, and deal with it all at the end, right. But regardless, you have to deal with it in Retail Pro so that when you're ready to merge, that everything will be clean of errors. Okay, so that's the point. All right. So let's see, let's make sure I'm staying on, yeah, troubleshooting bad scans and basic zones. All right, so you've got one zone, right? You go back out, and so the other thing with scanning, right? Once you download the scanner, right, the most important thing you do after you check and see that you've got the items is delete the scan off the scanner before you give it to somebody to send back out. That's the most common mistake people make when they're using the scans, right? Make sure you got them in Retail Pro, right? Delete the scans before you send the scanner back out to count the next zone. Try to keep the scanner in, you know, out there working the whole time, right? Also, we recommend with the scanners that you make your zones so that you can comfortably scan an area in 15 or 20 minutes. Don't scan for an hour and then come and dump the scanner, because if something happens and you lose those scans, that would be very sad. Okay. Plus, people get really tired. If you go for an hour at a time on the same zone without a break, you know, it's easier to make mistakes. So recommendation is in a zone, something you can scan in comfortably in 15 to 20 minutes, 100 to 200 items type of thing. Come dump the scanner into the zone, delete it, go back out and scan another zone. If you have errors, right, and you want the same team who actually scanned it the first time to deal with the errors, then give the scanner, right, to a different team while that team tries to find and pull the errors for the last one. And you have to feel that out, right? What you don't want to do is leave your scanner idle while you're looking for errors. You want to get through counting everything as quickly and as accurately as possible. All right, so I'm going to make a couple of new zones. They don't necessarily have to have anything in them. Okay, and close new zone in BCC. Okay, manual enter close. Okay, so we create multiple zones. These are scans that correspond to the zones on your zone map, right? So for you, Mary, when you're done scanning all the zones, right, you might still have, you know, a pile of things that were unidentified, right? And if you have a pile of things that are unidentified, or for you, Christy, if you have things that you just need to manually add just because, right? I did this in my zone up here, right? But if you create a zone and call it, you know, error or manual or something like that, as long as it's got under 5 characters, right? This can be your place to put whatever adjustments you need, right? And all you need here is UPC or item code, right? And if you want to have it stop so that you can enter the quantity, if you check this radio button right here, quantity for current item, right? So when you enter the item here, it's going to stop, right, and let you type in a quantity. Okay, so that's the difference between this next item button and this quantity for current item button, right? If I say scanned, what am I doing here? I'm not in the right thing. All right, so scanned, add counts. Okay, so if I leave it on next item, you can see I type in a number or scan a number, press enter, it automatically puts in 1, right? If I put quantity for current item, if I type or scan a UPC, it's going to stop here. Now, if it's just a onesie, you can press enter, but if it's a dozen, you press enter. All right, and so this is the way that you can enter things that you can't scan or that got pulled out and put in your trouble pile, and you just need to get them in. You don't have to run them through a scanner, right? You can just type in the codes, right, and the quantities and get everything in to a zone. All right, so you've counted everything. Now, for you, Mary, right, some people prefer to do what we call merge as they go. Okay, which means that if I downloaded zone 1 and there weren't any errors and I was done with it, right, I could just say merge that zone. I can highlight it, click on merge zone, okay, it asks, it verified who's logged in, right, and that puts a blue dot there, right? So if you've done this before, blue dots are good, red dots are bad, no dots mean you haven't done anything, okay? So some people merge as they go, and for you, Christy, right, when you're done with your bulk stuff, you merge all that stuff and then wait for the Regis later?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So however you choose to do it, you can merge as you go, right? Or you can mark store. It means that puts a green check every place that's never been merged, only if there's no red dot. If there's a red dot, you got to get rid of the red dot before you can merge that particular zone. Okay, but anytime along the line, if you want to merge, in Christy's case, if she's counted all her bulk items, right, and she wants to merge them all, you can mark everything that's sitting there and then merge marked over here. So on the side, okay, we'll put a blue dot every place there's a green check. All right, so for Christy, right, she counts all her bulk stuff, she puts all these in, and then she waits for Regis to get done. Right, for Mary, right, you if you've got everything in, you've got all your scans in, you have any changes that you need to make, right, you are ready now to look at discrepancies, right? So, Christy, you know how to import your Regis, right? Do I need to go through that? Christy, are you there? Oh, somebody's raising their hand. Okay, Christy. Hang on a sec.
Oh, okay, I'm back.
Okay.
But yeah, if you could go through that as a reminder, that would be great.
Yeah. No, that's totally fine. All right. So essentially, right, when Regis gives you a file, and the file, right, has it's a fixed length file, and it has zone first, and then UPC or ALU, and then quantity. And you should already have a map on your system that meets that matches that, right? So what you do, right, is, and I think in 9, what we usually do is say create a blank zone.
Yeah, I just call it Regis blank, yeah.
Right, right. So you create a blank zone, and then you say, go find the file, wherever the file is, and that's probably not even a real one. Okay, and then you check to make sure your map, right, is the fit. If you have more than one, you might need to check the file and see what layout it's in. And I couldn't guess, right? But if there's only one, chances are it's the right one. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and make sure you're on the right map, and then you click import, and that's it.
Okay.
Okay. And this one is, I know, not going to do the right thing because I just fudged this map together right before here, or before we did this. So I have no idea what's in this file. But that's all you do, right? Make sure your map matches, navigate to where the file is, and click import. Okay, and what that does then is that makes, you know, a bunch of zones, right, based on whatever the zone was that Regis counted it in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so once you get that imported, now occasionally you get errors from that, right, and then you go through and resolve them in your, you know, best fashion. Okay, and so in years past, have you been able to do this all, get the Regis file, get it imported, and resolve any errors before you leave the store that night?
Yeah, I mean, we start early in the morning, like at 5 in the morning, and it's a 12-hour day for me usually, but that's because we're just doing last-minute stuff. They are usually gone by about noon.
Okay. Is
so
the
we
store
get
closed?
We stay closed. Yeah.
Stay closed. Okay, that's good. Right, that's the best possible scenario. Just focus on getting the count done and getting it done right.
Mhm.
Okay, so the thing here is once you've merged everything, so I'm going to go ahead and merge this last zone. Once you've merged in everything, then that's when you can look at your discrepancies. Right, so to look at your discrepancies, you go back to stores. Okay, and here, right, you look at the discrepancy tab, and this is only going to show you things that are different. You know, right now everything in my store is different because I didn't actually count everything, but this shows everything that's different. Okay, and you should have some doc designs that can sort and report this by department or by vendor, and so you can do this just to see where your discrepancies are. You can, you know, look through this and look for the big numbers. You can, you know, however you generally do that. I'm going to just do this one. Okay. For some reason, I'm at the wrong printer. Okay. And this really is, you know, about showing you where you might have problems and maybe you need to think about recounting, right? Because if you've got a big differential in a certain item, maybe there's a box someplace that you forgot to count, all right? So doing this in the store for you remotely, Mary in particular, right, is you want to at least take a peek at this, right? Because if I go to the end, come on, page 200, 300, 400. If I go to the end, some of them have the total discrepancies at the top. This one just is getting crazy. This database is a little t-shirt souvenir shop. They have like thousands of items. How are we doing? Getting to department MFG. Keep going. 1554. Why am I on page 1700 when it says page 1554? There it is. Okay. So most of these forms have either this info at the top or this info at the bottom. So if you want to just cut to the chase and look at this, you can. You can do it on the printout. There's also a way you can look at it directly on the screen. Okay. But if you're looking at the discrepancies, you know, you should take a quick peek at, you know, the item part of this, right? And most of these have a subtotal by department or vendor, depending on which version you have. Look at the subtotals and or scan this report, right? Or scan this, looking for, you know, big red numbers in the difference, right? So the difference column is the difference between what you had when you did the start physical, what you've counted in the form of, I counted all the stuff in zones and I merged it, right? And the difference between what Retail Pro thought you had when you started and what you counted, okay, is this. And this is the number that's important because that's what's going to get updated when you do the adjustment, okay? So that brings up a point, right? And I was asking Christy if they actually get this done all in one night, okay? And for somebody with a remote, your goal there in the remote is to make sure that you've counted everything and then do what we call prepare PI. And that sends that, you pull that up to the main where you actually do the updating step, right? So in the store, that the day of the inventory, you want to at least look at discrepancies, see if there's anything that's obvious that you need to recount and correct. Okay, and if there is anything, what we recommend is that you create a zone called fixes, right, and do the appropriate changes in the fixes, whether you have to add something that you forgot to count or subtract something that you overcounted. It's a good practice to do it in a separate zone so that you keep those changes isolated. Okay, so Christy, in the past, have you been in the practice of like directly editing this if you recounted? She got muted again. Yep. Okay. There we go. Phone unmute again. Okay. Let me see if, yeah, it says it's you're self-muted is what it's telling me. All right, anyway. Okay, so, some people are used to just direct editing is what we call this. And, physical, speaking, out of turn here, you can do it that way. The problem is there's no audit trail. Okay, so we discourage people from doing that. We try to, yeah, okay, so Christy says she does the fixes from this way, and, that's okay, right? But it's, knowing that you don't have an audit trail. Okay, so best practice from our standpoint is you go create a new zone, put the changes in that so that you have an audit trail. Okay, but if you're used to doing this and it hasn't caused problems, go right ahead. Okay, so you do whatever you're going to do to fix this, right? And so Mary, for you in the store, right, when you're doing a remote, you're going to take a look at this, see if there's anything that you need to recount, right? Recount it and change your counts, merge it if you're doing a separate zone, right? And then when you're ready to be finished at the, at the remote store, right? This update will not say update, it will say prepare PI, right? And so in my document right here, right, it talks about updating, reviewing, blah, 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 reviewing this, and then here, right, preparing PI in a remote store. Okay, so this button right here, depending on your version of Retail Pro at a remote store, it might say update, but most likely it's going to say prepare, right? So we wrote this a long time ago, and there's still people out there where their versions say update, but most people's will say prepare. Okay, and what that does is tell the remote, I'm done with this count. Send it up to the main. All right, so once you prepare PI at the remote, okay, then you want to quick poll. Okay, and you should have on your polling thing here, right? This one doesn't have a quick poll on, but you probably will have a quick poll on yours at the remote. So you want a quick poll, and that sends it up to the main. Okay, so you're done in the store, okay, and you go home, right? And then at the main, either that night or the next day or so, right? It doesn't have to be that night. You're going to see in your RPro PI at the main, okay, you're going to see this file, right? So you create this file at the remote, and then it pulls up to the main, and then you're going to review it at the main, right? Maybe look at the discrepancies again, but you're actually going to update at the main. Okay, So when you update, right, if you hit the update button, okay, it's going to ask you what the store location is. You're going to say next, right? And then this is really, really, really important, right? Make sure you change this to all items. Okay, so the default only items with a physical count, that will only update the on hand if you counted something. So if you had a -1 on hand and you left this down here at the bottom, it's not going to update that to 0 in the event that you're actually physically out of those items. So you change this to all items. This is the most common mistake that people in V8 make. Okay, make sure you check all items. Okay, next. Okay, reason code, we like to tell people, make sure you put physical as the reason code on it. Okay, and if you want to, backdate this, let's say your physical was actually, on the 2nd, right? You could backdate that. Now, before we do the update, right, this is actually going to change your on hand. So when we talked about the on hand report, if your accounting people want an on-hand report before and after the update, before you press the update button at the main, right, for you, Mary, right, you're doing this at the main, you run your on-hand report, then you come in here, right, you do the update, and then you go run the same on-hand report again. Okay, that will be different by whatever your adjustments are. Okay, now this is actually going to make one big adjustment, and I'm going to go ahead and update this because my counts don't mean anything anyway, and it's going to make a monster adjustment because I didn't do any counts. Okay, but I need to show you here. You need to make sure when you update that this filter is clear, right? So make sure it's clear, because if you say if there's a vendor in here, it's only going to update that vendor, and that would generally not be what you wanted. Right, so make sure you clear this, say okay, right, and now it's going to go through and it's going to make the adjustments to make your physical counts, take into consideration your physical counts. All right, and we're hoping it doesn't take too long. It might take a little bit. Okay, so this is actually creating an adjustment. Right, so I might be able to go back into Retail Pro proper and look at adjustments while we're waiting. Adjustments, because it's going to take a little while. Oh no, I absolutely don't want to do that while I'm here. Yeah, okay. All right, so but we do need to wait. All right, so this instruction set down here, right? This is where we're at, right? Updating the PI. It's very clear. Make sure you check all items. That's very important. All right. Make sure you say physical, finish, right? And then make sure you say clear all. Okay. Yep. Make sure you say clear all for your filter. Okay, and then when it's done, it's going to do that, and you're done. Okay, and this is some other stuff about dealing with this particular scanner, right? Christy, do you know what kind of scanners you have? Are you still muted? Let me open my thing here. Old PTs. Okay. Do you have the document, this document that goes with the physical? Okay, cool. All right. And so, Mary, right, if you want to tell me what type of scanner you have, or just, email a request in for the physical V8 physical inventory outline, right? Just let us know what kind of scanners you are so we make sure we get you the right one. Okay, and we're still thinking here in the update land. Right, so as you can tell, this takes a while. Let's see. Okay, so Mary hasn't responded about what kind of physical she has. All right. I'm hesitant to break this, but we're really done at this point. So we've updated our physical, right? It's creating adjustments, right? If you accidentally, oh, looks like it's done. Hang on. Done? Or not? Just went behind physical. Oh, there it is. Okay. So yes, it's finished, right? So now you're done with the physical. You can get out of this tool, right? I just wanted to point out that when you update the physical, it goes into this archive spot, right? So if you forgot to run a discrepancy report, or if there's a question mark about anything in the physical, it's sitting in archive right here. So there's the one we just did. Okay, you can open this up and look at it, right? You can unarchive it if you made a humongous mistake. If you have to unarchive it, please talk to a tech first before you do it, because there might be simpler ways to resolve whatever your issues are. Okay, but just know that it's not gone forever, and if something totally wacky doodle went on, right, then we do have this, and we can go look at it, figure out what went on, and help you figure out what the best way to fix it is. Okay, so don't unarchive by yourself because there may be a better way to deal with it. But you can go reprint your discrepancy report, right? So this is your discrepancy view for that archived physical. You can see in the blue spot or blue bar up here what it is, right? You can still print it. You can, look at the zones. You can basically look at anything that happened historically on any of these physicals. Okay, so that gives you a research tool in case you need it, right? And now if I look in adjustments, I'm going to see a big fat memo. Okay, and I backdated it to, so this is like every item in my inventory, it was adjusted from 10 quantity to 0. So it's pretty big. Okay, so, you can, these are the documents that keep your inventory in sync. Those are created automatically with the reason code physical on it. If you needed to go run a report, right, of all of those adjustments, that's also possible. You would probably want an adjustment, you'd probably want a journal. If you wanted to do that, let's see, journal, adjustment, audit, blah, 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 receiving. Okay, SO journal. Okay, doesn't look like there's one like automatically in here, but if you needed a report that shows all of the adjustments with, for that date range summarized for you, I'm sure we could come up with a report to do that. Okay, all right, that's probably about it. We came in at right about an hour, which is what we're supposed to do. And so, Mary, if you have any questions after the end of this, email in, right, and we'll try to answer them for you. You will both be getting a link to this webinar so that you can access it, on demand going forward. And if, Mary, you need this for your version of Scanner, just let us know what it is. All right. Any other questions? All right. So Honeywell type. Okay. So Mary, if yours is a Honeywell, right? Let me see if I can make sure that we've got the right thing for you, right? So that's going to be, let's see, training, PI docs, and Janum. V8 here, down here. V8, Dolphin, and Foundry Logic. Right. So if it's a Honeywell, and doesn't look like I have a V8 version of that. But this might be close enough. Oh, Mobile Suite. Here you go. This one right here. Mobile Suite. All right. Now your scanner may not physically look like this, but your the screens that show what to do and these settings are all the same. All right. So let's see. Okay. Scanning zones, right? So, okay, does that look kind of familiar? Yeah, so it's a Dolphin 6110, right? And so basically this retail mobile suite software runs on that. So physically the device, Janum, looks different, but this is going to be close to the way the scanner looks and works. So we'll go ahead and send you this, right? And like I said, practice downloading, right? Start a physical inventory and go into a zone and practice, and then just delete the physical inventory when you're done practicing, just to make sure, right? And do you use these scanners for receiving as well? Okay, so you don't use them for receiving and you only use them for physical, right? So do you remember about loading the existing Retail Pro items into the scanner? Okay, is that something that you remember doing? Okay. All right, so as long as you know that that is a good thing to do, right? So I would recommend that what you do is you set up, an hour appointment with the tech to make sure that your retail mobile suite is functional on the computer you're planning on using it on, right? And that you refresh your items and test it and all that. Then there'll be no scary things happening on the day of. But I'll go ahead and email you this to the email that you registered with, so you'll have this, you'll have more preparation, right, when you're ready to deal with the tech. Okay.